These days, the less said about Prince Andrew, the better. The disgraced prince is now known the world over for hobnobbing with predators, but he's much more than his shameful past. He's also just a really weird dude. By all accounts, Prince Andrew appears to be a fully grown human man, so it may surprise you that he's got an extensive collection of teddy bears, 72 to be exact. The prince has spoken about his surplus of stuffed bears in the past, saying, "I've always collected teddy bears. Everywhere I went in the Navy, I used to buy a little teddy bear, so I've got a collection from all over the world of one sort or another." Now, having a collection of something isn't odd, and even a grown man with a vast amount of teddy bears can be seen as something more eccentric than outright weird. But what Andrew makes his staff do with the bears is straight up bonkers. Palace staff had to literally be trained on how to arrange all the teddy bears in Andrew's room. And if they messed up, the prince, again, a full-on adult, reportedly threw a temper tantrum. Charlotte Briggs, a former Buckingham Palace staffer, told The Sun that she received an entire day of training for how to arrange Andrew's teddies, and that palace staff were handed a diagram showing them exactly where the teddies had to be placed during the day. Apparently, bedtime was a different story, and the bears had to be arranged differently so that they could watch the prince go night-night. As Briggs recalled, "It took me half an hour to arrange them. Most bizarre thing to be paid for. They each had a set place. His two favorite bears sat on two thrones either side of the bed. The others would sit at the foot of the bed on the floor." As bizarre as it sounds, this wasn't something that the public had to just trust Briggs on. Paul Page, who served in the Royal Protection Command, told The Sun he once caught a glimpse of Andrew's room filled with a myriad of teddy bears. No word on whether or not he noticed any signs asking for a rescue.
Basically, if those teddy bears aren't put back in that order, Prince Andrew will shout and scream at the maids. So they took a picture to make sure they get it right.
For a man who has as many teddy bears as he does, Prince Andrew allegedly has a bit of a mean streak, and it dates back to his childhood. According to some royal biographers, Prince Andrew and Prince Edward did not have the most loving brotherly relationship as kids, with the former consistently being, as the royals might say, a huge jerk to his younger brother. In the book Royal Children, Ingrid Seward recounted their relationship, writing, "Andrew bullied everybody and would constantly swipe his younger brother. If he saw Edward going for a particular cake, Andrew would try and grab it first." Another royal biographer, Nigel Cawthorne, corroborated Seward's account in an excerpt for the Daily Mail, writing, "From the beginning, palace staff found him a handful. His nanny, Mabel Anderson, called him Baby Grumbling because of his temper tantrums and obstinacy. When he was unleashed upon his prep school classmates, Andrew made sure to give them the same treatment he gave his brother, and by the time he left the school, Cawthorne says staff were glad to be rid of him. The royals, they can be jerks just like us." If you were close friends with someone who ran a sex trafficking ring, surely you would have noticed at some point that something was amiss. But Prince Andrew insists he had no knowledge of disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. The prince's friendship with the convicted sex offender has provided the royal household with plenty of headaches, including a lawsuit from one of the women Epstein allegedly trafficked. Virginia Giuffre claimed she was forced to have sex with Andrew when she was 17, but the prince has denied these allegations, saying he never met her, despite the existence of a photograph of the two posing together for the camera. Giuffre died in April 2025. During a disastrous BBC interview that further led to Prince Andrew's free-falling public image, the prince failed to show any remorse whatsoever toward Epstein's victims. He reiterated that he had no idea about his friend of 11 years' clandestine activities, and that he only went to visit Epstein after the allegations became public because he wanted to be, quote, honorable and break off the friendship face to face.
I felt that doing it over the telephone was the chicken's way of doing it. I had to go and see him and talk to him.
Given Andrew's long involvement with Epstein and the fact that he was once photographed partying on a yacht with a financier surrounded by nude women, his story that he had no idea about Epstein's crimes doesn't check out. Neither American nor British authorities have made a case against the prince, but he has since been forced to take a backseat within the royal family after his name was dragged so thoroughly through the mud. Of course, the monarchy itself doesn't come out looking clean either. Instead of addressing the topic or taking any real action, it's a subject they'd rather be ignorant of and not discuss at all. In one of her statements, Virginia Giuffre recalled being at a nightclub with Prince Andrew, saying they were dancing and that he was, quote, profusely sweating. When asked about this during his BBC Newsnight interview, Andrew apparently had a case of forgetfulness, claiming that he had no recollection of Virginia and being at the nightclub with her. He also chose a very peculiar hill to die on when he raised an issue with the claim that he was sweating.
I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat or I didn't sweat at the time.
If you found yourself laughing at that defense, it's because it's preposterous. Now, it's true that there is a medical condition that causes a person to not be able to sweat, but James Hamblin, MD, wrote in an article for The Atlantic that Andrew's claim of a temporary affliction was essentially nonsense, writing, "Anhidrosis is not consistent with the account Prince Andrew gave during the interview. Anhidrosis is rarely temporary. A temporary inability to sweat would defy medical precedent." And alas, a chance to make medical history was further thwarted when Andrew and his lawyers refused to provide proof of his diagnosis, claiming that requesting the records was a form of harassment and that the documentation was confidential. After Prince Andrew's disastrous interview and being accused of sexual abuse by Virginia Giuffre, the Queen Mommy got involved, with Elizabeth stripping her son of his royal titles in 2022. A statement from Buckingham Palace claimed that Andrew would no longer be undertaking public duties for the royal family. Yet for a guy who is no longer working for the family, he sure seems to be doing just that. The disgraced royal has still made appearances at some public family events, spending Christmas at Sandringham, showing up to the Easter Sunday service with the rest of the family, and most notably, he was allowed to wear a military uniform at the Queen's final vigil in 2022. Prince Harry wasn't even afforded the same exception, and even though he is also no longer a working royal, he also has no sexual offense allegations against him. Want to hear a quick joke? Prince Andrew outgrew his childhood penchant for bullying others, went on to treat everyone he met with respect, and everyone thought he was super cool. That's funny because it's not true at all. Palace staff who have dared to speak up to reporters sketch a pretty horrific picture of what they've had to endure from the prince. In his book, Gilded Youth, Tom Quinn recounts the stories some staff members have relayed to him, with one staffer confiding, "Andrew was always curt to the staff and dismissive of them. He treated them as if we were living in the Middle Ages." As Andrew's public popularity dwindled in 2022, former Royal Protection Officer Paul Page spoke up about what he'd witnessed while working at the palace. You know, aside from the prince's creepy obsession with teddy bear placement. As Page told the Mirror, there are instances and evidence of Prince Andrew being overbearing and verbally abusive. Another staffer who was brave enough to speak up said the prince was consistently rude to palace aides, exhibiting childish behavior such as, quote, throwing things on the ground and demanding they pick them up. There are stories even more reprehensible than these that have made the rounds. In another book by Tom Quinn, Yes Ma'am, The Secret Life of Royal Servants, former palace employees revealed how Andrew fired a staff member because he had a mole on his face, and another staffer got cut because he made the mistake of choosing a nylon tie for his attire that day. If his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein didn't make it clear enough, Prince Andrew allegedly loved fraternizing with women. When his involvement with Epstein started making news, it didn't come as a surprise to many who had worked at Buckingham Palace.
We used to have the joke that he should have a revolving door in his bedroom, the amount of women that are going in and out there. It was just literally every other day.
In the Peacock documentary, Prince Andrew, Banished, journalist Helen Kerwin-Taylor supported Page's claims, saying the prince, quote, couldn't keep his trousers closed, and royal author Phil Dampier said that sex was the prince's weakness. In keeping with his alleged behavior at home, word on the street is that Prince Andrew was also quite a handful when he still traveled to fulfill royal duties. While he apparently left the watchful eyes of his beloved teddy bears at home, he did make sure that someone brought along another trusty companion, a 6-foot ironing board. Ex-diplomat Simon Wilson came forward in the 2023 documentary The Real Crown, Inside the House of Windsor, to talk about how Andrew's travel companion left everyone in the near vicinity perplexed, saying, "We were shocked when a 6-foot ironing board was trying to be negotiated into one of the embassy cars. I asked the valet and said, 'This is insane.' And the valet's response was, 'No one knows how to iron His Royal Highness's trousers like me.'" Wilson also recalled how they received a checklist ahead of time that informed them that the prince would only drink room temperature water. Even if he had his water and perfectly ironed pants, there was still no guarantee that Andrew would behave. Once he threw a big boy tantrum and refused to deliver a prepared speech he was scheduled to give, with Wilson recalling, he tapped the ambassador on the head 2 or 3 times and said, "This is the man who will tell you all about trade," and sat down. In news that should be shocking to absolutely no one, royal experts have made the bold claim that after his public downfall, Prince Andrew will never get to be king. The disgraced royal is somehow still 8th in line to the throne, but it's apparently not close enough to his liking. In his book, Yes Ma'am, Tom Quinn questioned palace staff about Andrew, and one of them told the royal author, a bit like his Aunt Margaret, Andrew always behaved as if he was frustrated about not being the firstborn, and therefore destined to become king. This frustration made him a bit of a bully in private, I think. In another of Quinn's books, titled Gilded Youth, a palace staffer claimed Andrew resented his older brother Charles for his place in the line of succession, with the aide confiding, "I really think he looked down on Charles, and, as with so many younger royal princes, thought he would make a much better king than his eldest brother." It could be argued that even without the sexual allegations against him, Andrew's behavior has proved that he would in fact be a terrible king, no matter what his teddy bears may whisper to him at night. If you or anyone you know has been a victim of sexual assault, help is available. Visit the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network website or contact RAIN's National Helpline at 1-800-656-HOPE 4673.